off. Good morning, everyone. So, as we had discussed last week, we thought it will be a good idea to try and present our thoughts and wrap up the year that has been. This year has been extremely active in terms of activities based around the AI technology. A lot of new models coming up, a lot of hype and news. Um, Both positive and negative sentiments also coming out, and multiple issues being raised around the efficacies of AI. So I thought it would be a good idea to capture the thoughts from our members of the forum who can talk about uh, their perspective on what has transpired, what are the opportunities and which are the focus areas for us as a group, and what we think would happen going forward in the next 1 year, and what are the things as a group we could do to participate in some of the developments. So with that, I would request, say, Onkar, you have been very active in the field, so why don't you kick this off? I would
Thank
just
you.
request anybody who's speaking should start the camera so that we will get um, you on the recording. Over to you,
Uh,
Onkar.
yeah, thank you, Alok. So this year has been a year of AI. So we have seen huge amount of traction happening in AI. Earlier, it used to be just a name, but now it is a reality, and each of one of us are able to access it very easily. So it has become accessible. We are expecting that GPT 4.5 will be launched at end of this month. Then we are expecting that Gemini Ultra will be released next year in January. While both of them are being released, with respect to accuracy benchmark, I would be extremely skeptical if they are able to reach, beyond 90 to 91% accuracy. The reason is that the underlying mechanism behind transformers is compression. So it's a lossy compression. So when you're actually training it, you're just compressing the data into all the neurons in that transformer there. So with respect to that, if you have 100% compression, then it will be basically a parrot copying whatever it has trained on. So having compression, lossy compression, is what gives the transformer systems a meaning. So I would be extremely surprised if we will see GPT 4.5 giving 95% accuracy on benchmark, and then Gemini Ultra Pro, some other version, will reach to 97%. I don't think that is going to happen. So as you start, reaching this 90 plus percent kind of territory, what will start happening is efforts to get that accuracy will start, exponentially increasing. At the same time, you will see the what do you say, the return on this particular investment, it will start diminishing. So in the meantime, while LLM have gathered traction, they have given visibility to AI and power of AI. There are other technologies which I am seeing will start gathering traction. One of them is graph neural networks, where again, the advantages, and I'll just walk you through two technologies that came this year. One was GraphCast by DeepMind, Google's AI subsidiary. So GraphCast is able to predict weather based on what 6 hour old weather was, and then you can predict next 6 hours of weather. Then you can predict next 6 hours of weather. That way, you can actually predict weather 10 days, 10 days in future. So something like this is going to be a huge boon to an agrarian economy as India, and there is a huge demand of, for very good prediction models in terms of weathers as well. Now, this is something, even if you have a huge LLM, they won't be able to do that, because now you have entered into extremely export territory, which are required to propel the economy. So that is number one. Another one example is GNOME. So this was for transforming material sciences, and the GNOME project basically was able to synthesize. It was able to predict material structures, and again, it uses graph neural networks in underlying structure. So it is able to predict material structures which stay stable in realistic environments, and they have been able to synthesize 346 materials, which is pretty huge for any physics based prediction system. So while I am seeing large language models have gathered a huge amount of attention, I would expect that, and I gave you two different examples from two different fields. So again, the graph neural networks have huge applications in this language field through knowledge graphs. Because what happens is that if I have some new data coming in, I have to retrain the entire model, or I have to fine tune. So that takes huge amount of memory. The advantage of graph neural networks is that you can store knowledge in forms of nodes into a graph. And when the knowledge changes, you should be able to retrieve that information very quickly. So with respect to that, while um, large language models are probabilistic, you will see graph neural networks being extremely deterministic, in the sense you will have very high accuracy of retrieving the data, and you would have the predictable output. So that is a amazing quality. So I would expect some kind of fusion to happen between knowledge graph and LLMs to give us, move from 90% to 95% to 97%. So some this kind of movement is going to start. Again, QStar, the reinforcement learning algorithm that was predicted, it is still a dream. I feel it's a pipe dream, because what happens is that error function loss area is too big to calculate. So I would, and it is going to take huge amount of compute resources for anyone to try even QStar. So I wouldn't pay mind to this thing. Another article that I sent today, it is basically where OpenAI is talking about super alignment. So when you have smaller AIs, you have alignment, that is fine tuning. But when you have bigger AI, super AIs, then you will need super alignment. They have released a $10 million fund. So that is something to be to look at, because they want to rein, if there is a rogue AI, they want to start reining it right now. So again, this is the overview in terms of what has been happening and what I'm seeing changes of the field that we would see in the upcoming future, and that is my take.
Great, Omkar. So that's a good technical overview, and I think you make this one very interesting point, which you raised earlier as well in the group, that the ability of the LLMs to improve their performance beyond a certain point comes at huge additional cost and possibly can never be achieved, right? So from moving from 95 to 97% is a huge task. At the same time, we have to recognize whether applications are satisfied with, say, 95% performance, which the best models are able to generate right now. So that's a space will be interesting to watch. Kamal, can I throw it to you now from your industry perspective? What would be your views on what has transpired, and how do you think things will shape up going forward into the next year?
Sure, sure. So I'll probably more do a retrospective of this year. Okay, and what are the major use cases that we are working on, assuming that. So I'm more on the user side, and I kind of represent the energy industry, you can say, right? But more from an Adani perspective, this year was like super exciting for us, right? So I think 1st January is when we opened our AI lab in Kolkata. Okay. And from there, we started doing a lot of exciting projects. Okay. Which are, so for example, forecasting the price of certain metals, because we purchase like billions of dollars of metals and all that, right? So that those some of those were like very important use case for us. But coming to right the whole topic of generative AI, okay, uh, within the company, and again I'm assuming this extrapolates to my industry. I see a lot of excitement at a personal level. Okay, right from the top, the CEO to guy on the desk. Okay, everyone is super excited. They have it all installed on their phone and they use it in different ways. Okay, and awareness has definitely gone through the roof, thanks to Chat GPT and all the hype. Okay, but I'm still not seeing the adoption at the enterprise scale. Okay. So we have done few POCs. Most of them are around, okay, talk to my document, right? So, okay, here is a repository of legal document, contract document, MIS, blah, blah, blah. So now I can start, rather than reading through them, I can start asking questions. Okay. but it's not really making that kind of an impact, right? And more than impact, it is, one has to see in the context of the cost. Okay, so what's the cost of running, and how am I going to protect the privacy of my data, because all of these documents are super sensitive. So, I mean, we talk to almost every vendor, whether it is Google or it is Microsoft. They are also, they say that, hey, we have figured it out, but we can see that they are also not very confident. Okay. So I think, to me, as we move forward in 24, that is the biggest piece of the puzzle, that how do you address these twin things, right? So cost and privacy of data. Okay. Of course, it is assumed, like what Omkar was saying, we will take it in industry, we have to take it for, that's a starting point, that the accuracy has to be there. The technology has to be reliable. It cannot start hallucinating when I'm asking some mission critical questions. Okay. So I think that's where I see. Okay, so we need to have that confidence on the tech, which I'm assuming a lot of people are putting money and trying to improve. But to really adopt it in the enterprise, we need to have those two things figured out: the cost angle and how to make it available to the masses, right? Suddenly I open it to my 40, 50,000 employees. Everyone starts asking questions and the cost starts bubbling up. So what's the solution to that? Okay. And how do I protect my data? In fact, few days back, we had to shut down access to Chat GPT from our office network because someone went ahead and uploaded some document and started asking questions. So those things needs to be figured out for Gen AI adoption. And to me, that's a big thing for 2024. In terms of some major use cases that we are working on and we will continue to work on in 2024, is one is around operational efficiency. How do you improve operational efficiency using AI? So within that, right, how do I do better asset health prediction? Yes, there are a lot of people who are talking about predictive maintenance, etc. Now the question is again, how do you get the confidence in this algorithm? So if my maintenance is due as per the OEM warranty clause, and my algorithm says that, hey, don't spend money on this maintenance, how much confidence I have, okay, to delay the maintenance, because these are all equipments which are costing millions of dollars. Can I take a decision based on algo? So what gives me that confidence? Okay, so that needs to be solved, because ultimately it is the guy on the ground who has to be, convinced that, okay, I can delay this maintenance by another 2 months, or let go of this maintenance because the equipment still seems to be at the prime of its health. Okay. Uh, Another one for us is demand and generation forecasting of energy. So what's the demand forecast? Okay. What's the generation forecast? The more accurate we can get on this, right? The better we can plan and streamline our operations and even things like procurement cost, etc. Okay. Now, essentially, it boils down to, I think Omkar also referred to it as weather forecasting. Okay. So demand forecasting is nothing but weather forecasting. If it's going to be a rainy day, my load will probably come down. If it's going to be a very hot day, my load will increase. Okay. But then I need to know, not at a high, I need to know with an accuracy of 99%. Okay. So that I'm able to plan my procurement of power accordingly. Similarly, on the generation side, it is also becoming essentially a weather forecasting problem. Okay, because we are becoming more and more a renewable company. So if the sun is going to shine more, I will get more, more generation. If the wind is going to blow more, I'm going to get more generation. But then I cannot look at macro patterns of sun and wind. I have to see what's the cloud cover going to be at my remote location. Okay, because the cloud cover will affect my generation capability, or what's going to be the local wind pattern, okay, in my wind farm. So we have to really nail down a way to go to micro level weather forecasting, and I believe AI has a big role to play. Another area we have really not been able to crack at an enterprise scale. We have done maybe 20 POCs. Maybe after I joined Adani, I myself have done at least 20 POCs around vision AI. using a video analytics, drone analytics, satellite analytics. So there are a lot of interesting use cases. But how do you get it deployed at an enterprise scale? Okay. Just in my business, we may have 5,000, 6,000 cameras, or maybe even more than that. How am I going to get the feed of all those cameras and analyze them and solve it at a scale, okay, where it is cost effective for me? Okay, and how do you build a platform where I keep adding, new use cases of Vision AI very, very quickly? So those are three, four important use cases for us from a operational efficiency, which we will continue to work in next year. Another is more from a consumer perspective. Now we have entered into smart metering business. We already have orders to install around 4 crore smart meters across India, and we are expecting another 2, 3 crores of smart meter that we will install. So that means we will have a ton of data coming our way. Okay, 5 crore smart meter data coming our way. What do we do with that data? How do we, give the consumers more insights, right, into their energy consumption pattern? How do we help them improve their carbon footprint? Okay, so that's another area we are trying to now get into. Okay, once these smart meters are operational and all the data starts flowing in, what insights can AI provide, and how AI can help the consumers become more have adopt a more sustainable use of energy, right? So these are some of the areas that we are working on, and the future looks very bright to me, especially with all the advancement, as long as those two things can be taken care of: cost and privacy, assuming tech is solid. Thanks.
Great, Kamal. That's very helpful, bringing in the industry perspective. So very clearly, what has been happening is there is a lot of buzz and noise around LLMs, and new LLMs are being launched with great regularity. There are thousands upon thousands of tools which have been built on top of the LLMs. But what I'm hearing you say, and which seems to be the case all around, is where are the applications for industry to adopt them? So there is some mismatch between what technology is delivering and what the user is expecting as an application, and that'll be an interesting space to watch going into the next year. Uh, at the same time, addressing some of the key concerns that you are raising around data or costs, IP is another issue which commonly comes up, and also misuse of the technology, deepfakes, etc. Um, Great. Can I now invite Shashi to share his perspective, especially from the perspective of policymakers, since you have been involved with a lot of them?
Yeah, I'll go last. Now let others speak.
Okay.
So Alok, I
Kshitij,
will drop off. I have a 10:30 meeting. I'm sorry about that.
no problem.
Yeah.
Kshitij, would you like to go next? Share your perspectives?
Yes. I would go. So some parts of obviously we are not into LLMs. We essentially do vision analytics. But what we are very interested in something called LVM. You guys must have heard about it. The name LVM was given by Andrew Ng about last week or sometime, because this L part of it is very important. Large part of it is there. Now, what the problem that we face day in and day out, and that is also put across by industry, is how do I take small amount of data? And when I say small amount of data, as I say, limited, some 50 images and 100 images, and then essentially then recognize something. So if we were to teach a person saying look for a particular type of vehicle, or look for a tow truck and things like that, you just need to show 2 or 3 images to that particular person, and then from then onwards mistakes are very less. Now this does not happen with us. We still, the way we are building models from a long time, is that you need 1,000, 5,000 images, and the data collection portion, the annotation, the training is not an easy process. It still takes anywhere between 8 to 16 weeks for us to come up with a model from scratch. And that is where we as a company have what we have done is we have assiduously collected data, and uh, that's where our models are very quickly deployed. But that's not the case on the technology side of it. On the technology side of it, the problems are still that if there is a person who wants to generate a model, then where is the large part of it and where is the quick part of it? That still doesn't exist. So that is something that we will follow up very closely during the year. Um, okay, the these models, although comes up with research guys, NVIDIA is great. NVIDIA basically then takes them in and provides us a platform in order to run that, in order to train these models. So that is something that we are very much going to work on. Shashi keeps giving us problem statements. Like for example, he told us how to count number of people in a crowd, and how do we utilize that information in order to provide service to somebody. Uh, that that is like, how many people are in a restaurant, how many people in a given election rally. These are similar problem statements that are there, which we will very closely work on. What we are also looking forward is some more research on the pose part of it, where we can look at how are people interacting with each other. The models that we have developed are kind of rudimentary. They work, but there is a lot of if then else software written on top of it rather than the AI part of it, right? So there is, I hope that differentiation is there. So we have to do if then else rather than just say that okay, there's a regression model and on top of it your pose model, and that's where you take off. So yeah, that's what is our strategy going to be looking forward. The another part of it is the voice part of it. The understanding of what is being spoken converted to a text which can then be fed into LLMs is something that we are being asked to do. That part of it is still the transliteration tools connect to LLMs, transliteration tools in presence of noise. So you, for example, there is a drilling noise in our apartment building as of now. So how do we do that? Those are some of the areas that we are very closely working on. That's all.
Thanks, Kshitij. Very interesting. So, obviously, video or audio visual is also a big area where AI is developing very fast. And in fact, a lot of issues have cropped up basis audio visual generation of content and manipulation of content
Correct.
as well,
Yes.
right? So everybody, including our Prime Minister, has talked about deepfakes being an issue.
Yes.
Um, so it'll be an interesting space to look at and watch out for. Uh, Next, can I invite Raj to share your thoughts?
Sure. Can you see me? Is my video okay? Perfect.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of points have been covered by Omkar, Kamal, and Kshitij. I fully agree with some of those points and interesting perspectives from their side. I think one of the points that Kamal talked about is very relevant. We see in our enterprise clients is that everyone is caught up in the frenzy of LLMs, but there is limited enterprise application for LLMs right now, other than content generation, content summarization, asking your documents, extracting things from document repositories, those kinds of things. And even in those applications, when the repositories are big and your vector database blows up to a big size, you suddenly realize that it becomes a very high cost kind of application. And recently we worked with a enterprise, and they were doing a very simple application. All they were doing is, they received tens of thousands of RFPs from various prospects across the globe, and they wanted to create a simple summarizer of the RFP, because many of these RFPs run into hundreds of pages, multiple documents, one for technical, one for financial, some details, appendices, this, that, the other. So it runs into hundreds of pages. They used to have a team which used to actually read through these hundreds of pages earlier. And now they said, okay, now we have LLMs. So let's just feed it to an LLM and get the answer. So they did that. We built them a RAG tool and implemented it on top of Azure, and they used it quite well. But at the end of the month, when the first bill came in, they realized they were paying tens of thousands of dollars to Azure to do all their analysis and to get answers. They were getting simple summaries, as well as they had a question and answer bot for senior people to ask questions to various documents. So, what you think is a simple application might run you into thousands of dollars of cost per month, just like that. And then as an enterprise, you wonder, okay, for this kind of money, is this what I'm getting? Because I can just have an analyst or two analysts or few analysts do this analysis. So cost is a real problem. Privacy also is a real problem, as Kamal had mentioned. But what we are finding is that using either an open source model on your own infrastructure, or using a RAG model on top of something like an enterprise offering of OpenAI or OpenAI service from Microsoft, seems to be reassuring to clients. But it remains to be seen whether really the privacy is being maintained or not. Although all these big companies have given assurances, one could, there's no way to find out whether your data is leaking out there or not. It's only about assurances. So eventually, someone will have to check whether the model is learning and is transmitting its learning to, or transferring its learning to its next version or not. So those are real issues from my perspective. From what I hear from clients, what Kshitij mentioned about audio and the ability to make multimodal analysis possible within LLMs is very interesting. Specific use case being, as again Kshitij talked a little bit about that. There are a lot of call center calls that happen. We have more than 1 million call center agents in India, and they are doing hundreds of calls. Typically each of them is working more than 200 minutes every shift. So you can imagine the number of calls that are being attended to. And there is a need for LLMs to understand audio, to translate and convert it to a language which they can understand, and then do meaningful analysis of that. To start with, even in batch mode, but eventually the world is going to really ask for real-time solutions to some of these. For example, as a call center manager, I want to really understand in real time whether a call center agent is being abusive, or for example, the call center agent is adhering to the norms of how he or she is handling the call. For doing that, we need multimodal models to really step up, to become faster, and to become cheaper. Because at the current cost, when you look at the fact that, oh, you have to translate in one algorithm, then move it to an LLM, which will then analyze and then get the insights. The turnaround times are large, the cost is large. Right now, that industry is doing it by sampling of 1% of the calls or less, to really understand in batch mode what is happening in the calls. But eventually there needs to be a multimodal LLM answer to that. So that's another thing I think which will be of interest this year, will be how these multimodal LLMs evolve. Can they take in video and do meaningful analytics? For example, will there be a feature on Netflix where I say, okay, I need to see humorous scenes in all the Roberto Benigni movies that you have on your database? Can they spit out those snippets in a search? That will be possible only when multimodal LLMs are available. Uh, the other thing that I am watching, of course, many of the people in this group have also commented on it on various social media, is the development of open source versus closed source models. Right now the closed source models are cheaper because these companies are well funded, and they're making it cheaper, right? So you go to GPT-4. If you can't afford GPT-4 for some applications, GPT 3.5 is cheaper. And when you compare the cost of doing your own model, hosting it, open source, right now, OpenAI and Claude and the other models seem to be winning the cost or the price war. But the world has to be watchful, because the way these technologies develop is that the the closed source developer will try to price the others out of the market. Eventually, with latest versions of these algorithms, if there is no open source alternative available, then you'll end up in a situation where the closed source option is the only option, and then they will start jacking up their prices, and then we'll be all held to ransom to use one of those few closed source alternatives. So it's important as a community that the AI and machine learning community keeps developing open source alternatives, keeps giving them funding from a VC perspective, and makes them available at a price which is in the ballpark, so that it is a real challenge to the closed source options. That's what my thoughts are.
Great. Thanks, Raj. I think this point is coming up repeatedly, which is the cost related issue. And there are two issues, according to me, related to cost. One is the high cost, but the other is the cost is a surprise. It's very hard for a user to predict what their cost is going to be at the end of the usage period, which doesn't work for enterprises, right? Because they want to have a hard handle on what costs they're likely to incur on a monthly basis or annualized basis. Now, therefore, do we have some thoughts on what uh, could be and what we probably as a group could do? So, just a quick, I'll go around before we come to the next speaker. So, do we have any thoughts, Raj? You have, or Omkar, Kshitij, you have some thoughts on what we could do to reduce these costs?
For me, for us, it's a solved problem, Alok. We know exactly what the costs are, right? And that is built into our business model as well. So it's not a surprise from sales perspective. So as far as camera, vision, drones, these things are concerned, these have been around for some time, and we ourselves have invested a lot of time and energy in order to give predictability to the cost part of it. LLMs are unpredictable because we don't know what kind of what kind of compute is being utilized there in the backend. So there is an issue there. From our perspective, I think we are there, and maybe one of the sessions in the new year will walk you through what is the costing that we go through, so that it is clear for everybody on this topic. And I would love to share. This is something which is engineering, as an engineering part of it, is something that we have done. I would love to share that.
Sure. So, Alok, my perspective is that the reason cost becomes an issue in LLMs is that, of course, technically you can count the number of tokens that's going into the input. You can count the number of tokens you can expect as output. And technically, you should be able to really calculate the cost of each query and all that. But what happens is the users really don't care, right? I mean, when you're a 10,000 employee multinational and you've thrown open an LLM tool to them, they don't care that, oh, there is an Azure instance running at the back end and we are running OpenAI service. So it's going to cost us tokens, which eventually add up. When you are feeding in, say, for example, a few hundred-page document repository into OpenAI, it is costing you money. And every time someone really runs a search of that repository, all that cost adds up. And I think increasingly this problem will become even more acute, because the world is now talking about moving to the next generation of queries and of LLM software, where users will create agents instead of simple queries. So an agent will be a piece of software which might spawn multiple LLM queries. It might interactively iterate through some queries based on the response of the LLM. And so, for example, we have use cases where we generate hundreds of queries on the fly based on the response of a particular prompts, and then generate hundreds of prompts. So at that point, it becomes difficult because someone's pressed the button and out come 100 queries, and it's running through a big document repository. So there is need for some sort of a tool which counts the number of tokens, predicts, especially when we get into the world of agents, what will be the cost of running a few iterations of that agent. And you will see, increasingly, it's not just the users who are crying foul. It's also the companies themselves, because ChatGPT had this ChatGPT Plus, and at one point they said, "Oh, you can upload documents to GPT-4 and actually run unlimited number of questions, and you get unlimited number of, up to 128 or 32,000 tokens at one point it was." And then you quickly realize that, oh, the cost for this is going to be humongous, and someone is paying $20 a month. OpenAI is exposed to hundreds of dollars of cost. So then they quickly, they quietly curtailed the capabilities of the GPT-4 that is available to GPT-4 to Chat GPT Plus customers. Now you can get only 2,000 tokens on the GPT-4 available through Chat GPT Plus. It's in the fine print somewhere. So the cost is hitting both the companies as well as the users. I think there will be increasingly tools available where you can via API call some tool which will examine your code and calculate how many tokens are being used. But that will happen.
So I think one of the issues is also the fact that even to run a small query, the LLM runs a huge amount of compute, right? It's always running trillions of processes, etc., which adds to the cost. So Omkar, you have some thoughts on that you have been talking about earlier.
Yeah. So cost is one factor we identified very early before going into doing any of the research. And what we did is so I have been in GPU computing since last 12 years, I guess. My master's project was on GPU compute. I built a molecular simulator, which basically simulated massive amount of water molecules at a cost of on NVIDIA GPUs. And NVIDIA, I have been known to be treacherous for a really long time. So what we did is early on itself, as soon as as early as 3 years ago, we shifted to like as soon as M1, M2 Max started coming in, we moved to that. So that is one thing that we did, because what happens is that you are able to take benefit of their SIMD instructions to run the models. That is number one. Plus, you have the GPU, you have an Apple Neural Engine, all of these different possibilities start jumping in. That is number one. Number two, as I had told you, that algorithm wise, we did a major development. So currently, transformer algorithm, I told you that it's a shitty algorithm because it is ordered to the n square. So it means that for every token that you have, like looking at number of parameters, you have to basically do square number of calculations to actually get even a single token. That is a huge expenditure. So what we have been able to do is we have been able to build a simple architecture which is ordered to the n when training and order to the one when doing inference. So with that, what starts happening is that I literally can on one of my Mac machines, I can literally train order a simple 2 billion parameter model from scratch in a month. And that was what I was planning to do. Like we had basically set up all the pieces in terms of language translation to starting the new model. But as soon as that Vivek Raghvan and all of that $41 million funding, all of those things come in. So we said no, we are not going to go into that because even for open source effort, it doesn't make sense. So we again came back and we started doing what we have been doing for a really long time. So the idea is that you need to think out of the box in terms of in terms of compute. Apple is a big player, but Apple is your god if you want to try out at a smaller scale. At larger scale, game is changing. So Cerebras like computes are coming where you will get 1000 GB kind of GPU compute with huge amount of cores, which where you can just take whatever model that Andre Karpati wrote, and you can basically should be able to run it on all the systems. There are more efforts which are being done on AMD and Intel front, where they have been able to they are trying to improve their device driver capabilities. It's not a hardware problem, even for Intel or for AMD. It's a software problem, and they have never thought of this as a serious thing. Where Nvidia was able to do that, Nvidia and Apple, they were able to focus on that. So again, that is the gist of it. Next year is going to be extremely interesting going into these things, because you will see optimized hardwares which power which power transformer like architecture. So I cannot predict what is going to happen one in the year into the future, but market is going to change drastically. But for now, I would advise that Apple devices are powerful. You could use that if you want to get quick entry into the system.
Jay, can I invite you next? You are especially looking at a lot of applications from the social sector and especially education. So, would you like to share your thoughts?
Uh, just a second. So let me quickly. So I'll just be very brief, and I think maybe Shashi will also cover some of these aspects. When we started out in the beginning, one of the things that we were very keen to uh, take up was this idea of how will AI impact society. Now, yes, I mean, society also includes corporate, it also includes other, institutions, but we were very keen to examine this question on is it creating some sort of have and have nots or that digital divide that we always talk about? Is it going to create something more, but more for the social dynamic in the social sector? And I think in the last year, while ChatGPT and the technologies have, taken everybody's interest, I think there is this very strong notion now of issues around privacy, and I think the data protection bill was one of them that became a question. The second one was the issue about safety, and I think the safety question also is still unresolved, and it is something that we are going to see going forward. The important thing that I see, and that to me is a good thing, is at least the awareness has grown. And I think with all the questions that are being raised in this forum and the way everyone is talking about it, I think it's also becoming really important to think about these safety issues as an issue that we don't uh, add on later on, rather than think about it fundamentally when we look at some of these things. And I think now there is some interest in the ministry around regulation, issues around regulation. Now what that regulation will entail, what it means, I don't think we have an idea, and I think that is where some of our work is going to start this thing. So we are in the process of engaging with some interns that will hopefully we'll be able to elaborate on this particular question. uh, all in all, I will say that there are multiple dimensions to this new technology, and I think we are quite excited about what is in store for us in the coming year. I think the past year has just been an indicator of the kinds of things that will come up going forward. Hopefully, in the next year, we will be able to take a look at some of these things and maybe explore some of them to the extent that this forum and this group then becomes sort of the entity that is driving some of the conversations around various aspects, but more from the focus of AI for India. That is, how is it impacting various aspects of Indian life, or in terms of Indian, engagement with the technology.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Rajesh, would you like to add?
Yeah, Alok. So I think adding to the points Jay just made, on the safety, data privacy, overall the regulation space, we are looking at it in more detail, and we should have. I mean, that's an important area, and we'll be doing more work. We'll go more into it in the coming year. I also wanted to share a couple of takeaways that I've had, from some of the work that we've done in the forum, as well as the more recent Global Technology Summit and the GPay AI Summit that that has happened more recently. This is with respect to the applications of AI and adoption of those applications in priority sectors. I mean societal sectors. It could be healthcare, education, and it applies for in the enterprise as well. I think a common approach that we have today in terms of trying these AI applications is more bottom up. Looking at some of those use cases and then doing a proof of concept. I think going forward, there needs to be a combination of both bottom up and top down. Where we look at, I mean, once we've validated the technology with a proof of concept, I think one needs to look at a top-down approach where we look at what are our systems that we have in the organizations, and how can this new capability that we have validated with a proof of concept, benefit, right? In terms of looking at the systems and the workflows within those systems. It could be, it could be in enterprise systems, it could be CRM, it could be enterprise resource management system, and how we do production planning or maintenance scheduling, some of these areas, from a enterprise standpoint. We look at some of these workflows and where this AI enabled capability can make a difference, and then do a pilot, right? To validate that. How can we really embed this AI capability into this system and this workflow, and how can we really see some kind of a efficiency improvement, or better predictability of certain outcome, or a better decision making, right? So that is more from an enterprise standpoint. Looking at it more from a societal sectors like agriculture or education, I think we will need to look at it more from an ecosystem point of view. The top down will be really looking at what are the workflows, what are the systems that are there today, across government, private sector, that can come together, and how AI can be applied there. So I think startups like Kshitij or Omkar will keep innovating with new capabilities, powered by AI, but how we embed them into systems, workflows, whether it is in the enterprise or in the societal priority sectors. I think that the ecosystem, our forum can play a role in terms of being able to map it out, and then also look at identifying what are some of the digital public infrastructure components that can make a difference, particularly in the education and agriculture. When we do this mapping, I think we'll be able to identify some of those components. And what I'm thinking there is, there could be some borrowing the idea of these foundation models, we could be looking at domain specific foundation models that become like a DPI. It could be with respect to in agriculture, or education, or even I think video surveillance. The startup that Kshitij runs. If you look at a domain specific foundation model, then we look at what are the capabilities required in video surveillance, what kind of things that it should detect. And if we create a domain specific foundation model, and then maybe not all by one startup, maybe there is a need to collaborate there, maybe data exchange systems that will be required. That could be another public infrastructure that may be useful, a data exchange system. And once we come up with this foundation models, then innovating on top of that, developing enterprise applications on top of that, will probably bring down costs and make it more easier to manage, right? So I think in terms of just to summarize, I think we could be looking at understanding some of these ecosystems, mapping it out, more with a top-down approach. What are the workflows? What are the systems in place? How can they benefit from AI? That is one. And then being able to identify what are some of those components that needs to be provided or enabled as a DPI, to really drive some of these adoption as well as impact. So those are some thoughts that I had.
Great, Rajesh. Some very interesting thoughts. So, Shashi, over to you for the last word.
Thanks. No, I think the DPI point that Rajesh made was very interesting. I think we should maybe do a
Can you start your camera?
thing around. Camera is not functioning in this Teams thing for some reason.
Okay, never mind.
So anyway, we'll just let's do it this way. So maybe we should do something on DPI later on. Just thinking. So coming to the year in perspective, I think it's a year of so much of action, so many developments. I think it's very hard to keep everything in perspective. I think the comments that everyone made, I think, are very helpful and useful in that sense to put things in perspective. The LLMs have brought AI conversations to the mainstream. Otherwise, AI was always on the little esoteric, hard to understand. Not too many people knew what it was about. Even though we were perhaps, consumers of AI in multiple ways, right? I think the LLMs have brought the discussion center stage. I think from an impact on society standpoint, I think that is perhaps the biggest change that we've seen in the last year. Uh, of course, all kinds of questions now related to that in terms of copyright issues, privacy issues, what harm they can potentially cause, and so on. Uh, the way I see regulations, at least from an India standpoint, I don't see anything happening till the elections are done, because there's a complex area, and I think we're still learning. Uh, the one area where perhaps we will see progress is around the data privacy, since that act was already passed, and those rules are likely to be notified by the end of the month. So maybe that will be the first area where we will see some activity from a regulatory standpoint around AI. The other area where I'm pretty sure we will see some strong government intervention will be on deepfakes, given the concern around elections and what's happening already with deepfake videos and deepfake content. So I think these are two areas where we should expect regulatory interventions in the interim. But I think the larger problem from an India standpoint will be the use cases that are relevant to India and at what cost they will come from, and how do we get there. Uh, so I think the initiatives around creating a public compute, again, compute as a DPI, I think these are things that we should look out for in the next year. And then Indian language models, the work that Vivek and others are doing. So I think these are two areas which would be relevant in the coming year. Of course, there'll be a lot of noise because the big platforms, the smaller platforms, everyone is competing for mind share in the public domain. So I think that noise. So we'll have to see through the noise, spot the trends, and then see how they evolve. Uh, but one message that I'm taking from today's conversations is that from an enterprise standpoint, clearly the LLM world still has a lot of distance to cover before it becomes a serious enterprise grade technology. I think that gap is quite significant. uh, Rest, I think from our forum standpoint, I think it would be interesting how we can grow this group, bring in more voices, more participants, maybe formalize some of our activities, maybe actually do a physical event, since now that we've almost had a year of online virtual events. So that's what I'm looking forward to for 2024.
Great. Thanks, Shashi. That was a good final word. I think, to me, there are three things. So, apart from all the issues which everybody has talked about, there are three things I just want to place on the table. One is the fact that LLMs are part of AI, but AI is not LLM. But the in the last year, all the buzz has been about LLMs, and people have forgotten all the other AI models, many of which are highly accurate. Most of the applications that Kamal talked about are all to do with AI on data. It's not LLM based use cases which he is talking about. Similarly, a lot of audio, visual, or video based applications are not based on LLMs, and so on. So that uh, I heard recently two interesting comments, and I think that's a good perspective to take forward into the next year. One was that somebody did an analysis over the years and said that the real takeoff point for a new technology is the second year. Uh, and from that perspective, 24 will be the second year of the big hype of AI and LLM. So there might be a lot more usage and applications coming in. And the other is the perspective that LLMs are really like the internet. It's what you build things on. It's not the end in itself. But so far, this year at least, the LLMs have been positioned as the end application. There is this chat box, and then you can do whatever you want with the LLM directly itself. So that's possibly one of the things which is likely to change. And these are the two areas where we could, as a group, start putting more thoughts and working on specific applications. So with that, thank you very much, and we will continue to have our sessions and thoughts being shared. Thank you.